And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us after a somewhat entertaining home run derby tonight. Cal Raleigh ultimately takes it home. How rare is it that the favorite, or at least the home run leader going into the All-Star break, is actually the guy who wins the derby? It is extremely rare, especially in recent years. So good on Cal Raleigh for getting the victory there. So great first half, capped off anyway by the home run derby championship, and gotta hope that the Mariners get some more offense and make a push here and try to stay in that wild card spot as they gear up for a postseason run. Pitching staff was supposed to be great in Seattle. It's had its ups and downs. We've talked at length about the need for that pitching staff to be the dominant force there for them, but with the offense beginning to falter, they certainly are looking for some additions. Now, one guy who isn't faltering for them besides Cal Raleigh has got to be Randy Arozarena, one of the league's best hitters over the last month, and he absolutely deserved to be in the All-Star game. I'm curious to see what they do with that other outfield spot. That seems like a bit of a revolving door over there, and I'm curious to see if they go with a more of a long-term approach to that spot, or if they go with the rental option, which seems like the most likely at the current time. Other buyers at the market right now as we gear up for the MLB trade deadline, a little under 3 weeks away now. We're looking at the Texas Rangers being a clear buyer. I keep seeing articles out there about how the Rangers might sell at the deadline. That's not happening, folks. The Rangers are clearly going to be buying. I keep seeing articles about how they may trade Adolis Garcia even if they do buy. Let me tell you one player who is not moving on this roster, given where this offense has started to pick up right over the last 3-4 weeks. That's Adolis Garcia. I understand the money savings might be worth it to Texas to a certain extent, but there are other ways that you can save salary in other trades. The Rangers will not be selling on Adolis Garcia at this year's trade deadline. Other buyers, like the New York Yankees, are looking for a starting pitcher. They've kicked the tires on several starters that are going to be free agents at the end of the year, including some controllable ones, including Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins. John Heyman put out an article today that basically detailed the Twins' approach here at the deadline. It sounds like they are going to put on the block both relievers, Griffin Jax and Duran. Both should command a hefty price in trade. But that's not the only thing they're going to be trading. If they're going to trade their expiring deals, they may even try to find a suitor for Carlos Correa if he waives his no trade. If they find a competitive situation for him, I'm sure Carlos Correa probably would be willing to get out of Minnesota and get back into postseason baseball once again, with Minnesota likely heading towards a full rebuild here shortly. Joe Ryan, of course, has been had his name out there. Red Sox, Yankees, no shortage of teams would be interested in him as kind of a 1A, 1B in rotation kind of a starter. But Byron Buxton, according to John Heyman, is very likely going to be staying through the deadline. He would have been probably one of the best bats behind Ralphie Devers, who could have been moved here at the deadline. A great year by Buxton, excuse me. And I'm curious to see if the Twins decide to move on from that contract. If you know anything about kind of northerners in that area, Minnesota, South Dakota, that kind of thing, grew up around those types of people all my life. That type of atmosphere, they don't really worry, or they're not going to worry too much about the salaries involved in that kind of a thing. So while it might be opportune when you're doing your trade calculators for you to take on the salary of some big name piece there, they might not be so willing to take a negative asset on their roster or a perceived negative asset and allow it to deter them from getting top dollar on the other trade assets that they do have. Now, the Twins certainly are trying to work out their ownership issues. That's a big issue for them. And there is some thought process to the money being an issue on that team. That's why a guy like Buxton, who's making $15 million a year, Correa, who's going to be making $30 million a year, those types of players are often mentioned in trades, but I'm just not sure how motivated the Twins are to move them. Whereas traditional logic would say, hey, ownership coming in, make it most attractive, get rid of big salaries, pare down the payroll, accrue prospects, and have a bright future. That's not what the Twins are doing right now. It sounds like they're kind of taking a more cautious approach here at the deadline, but it does sound like Jax and Duran certainly will be moved at the deadline. Duran to a lesser extent, it sounds like, but Jax is getting significant buzz out there. Surprising that he's the one getting the most buzz so far. Because, again, he doesn't have that closing experience. Duran does, but the swing and miss is what's there for Griffin Jax versus Duran. Duran still is a great pitcher. Strikeout rate is still pretty decent, but for him, it's certainly at a career low for him. But he also has a league-best ground ball rate as well, so he's not giving up great contact. Both of those relievers should get you a pretty penny. I'd expect the Philadelphia Phillies to end up with one of those guys. Texas, New York, Boston, any of those other teams that are looking for elite bullpen help, I think it'd be a nice fit for the other arm. Heel, welcome in. Sean, welcome back. Homer Derby was fun. Rangers and Show should go after O'Neal Cruz. They're not going to be moving O'Neal Cruz. It'd be nice in a couple years, but that's a conversation that's way too early. Teams are interested in Adolis. I don't care how much he owns Houston if the deal is right in trading him. That's kind of my thought process to a certain extent. If you get bowled over, say somebody's offering you, a Wyatt Langford level player. Say somebody's offering you, Max Fried in exchange for Adolis Garcia. That would be something I'd have to consider. But that's not going to happen. Nobody's going to overpay to that extent for Adolis Garcia with the ups and downs he does have. But he certainly is a playoff performer, rises to the occasion, and I think the Rangers absolutely need that type of presence in their clubhouse right now. They are not trading that at all, especially with them only being 3.5 games back of the wild card, and this team finally starting to come together. Sean, does Marcell Ozuna get traded? I do believe so. John Heyman was putting that in an article as well, along with Joel Sherman of the New York Post, basically saying that Ozuna could really help his case to be moved here at the deadline if he has a nice couple of weeks after the All-Star break. I still think he likely gets moved, even if he doesn't. I think there's going to be a desperate enough team out there that says, hey, into the bench guy, put him in there at DH, see what he's got, those kinds of things. That's the kind of market I see for him developing. I doubt, even if he does get hot over the next couple of weeks, that a premium would be coming back to Atlanta in a return. Twins would be dumb not to at least try and trade Buxton. This is highest value he'll probably ever be, especially considering he is never healthy. True, but I will say this. Minnesota is extremely loyal to some of their players once they get to that status. Looking at Joe Mauer, who had incredible trade value for a long period of time while he was still a productive catcher, and Minnesota held on to him, moved over to first base, lost all trade value, and they still were committed to him. Justin Morneau, etc. Now, of course, changing of the guard, all those kinds of things come into play, but I think Minnesota and that area of the country in general is just a lot more loyal, and that word loyal means a lot more to those to that group of people than a lot of other markets, than what it might mean in a lot of other markets. So as far as trading Buxton, he would be my number one outfield trade target at the deadline this year. I think he'd be a great fit on pretty much any of the contending teams. Houston solves a lot of their issues. Philadelphia needs a center fielder. He's a proven option, able to do it at the big league level to where you don't have to go after a rookie in your minor league system in Justin Crawford and hope he can handle it when the lights shine the brightest. Texas obviously needs bats. I think he could use him in center field, kind of platoon him out there in center with Evan Carter, move him over to DH, at times as well whenever you want to get Carter in the lineup and Buxton in there. There's a lot of different ways you can tinker with the lineup in that regard, but there's plenty of teams that could use a Buxton, and with his numbers over the last 30 days and basically the entire season, honestly, his power numbers are certainly through the roof this year, and the fact that he's able to stay healthy has got to be the most, the best part of that case, because Buxton's always been seen as an incredible talent, but he's never been able to put it all together because of injury. So I'm glad to see that he is healthy. Mark, also I think the Tennessee pitcher Texas drafted might be fast track, maybe 2 years if they start him as a bullpen arm. True, but I don't think they'll necessarily start him as a bullpen arm. I think they'll still give him every chance to be a starter. The one thing the Rangers did this year is they went a young high school prep bat, and they got Gavin Feen, one of the best bat out of those high schoolers this year. He's going to be a few years away. Now, the rest of the draft, they went with what Evan Grant kind of coined in the Dallas Morning News today as a market inefficiency. That they saw a lot of injured players not being drafted by a lot of teams out there, and yes, there's a red flag on them for a reason, but that nobody was really scooping these guys up. And the Rangers had done that in the in the 2010s to 2020 without any real luck. Those guys who they did draft in those spots with those similar red flags had significant issues that were ultimately unable to make it through. They have an incredible medical staff. Keith Meister is the team doctor anyway. He is the best surgeon for a lot of the baseball injuries that we have, not just for the Rangers injuries, but for pretty much any major sports surgery that needs to be done. He's one of the names that you might hear in a lot of different surgeries for your favorite player. So Rangers feel like they have a leg up on a lot of the competition because he is their team doctor, and they can have him kind of review the medicals and see how recurring these issues are, how impactful they'll be to their future progress. And I think that's something where the Rangers are trying to take advantage of there. Sean, what did they say about the Cubs' deadline plans? Sherman and Heyman, that is. As far as the Cubs, they're looking, high and low for pretty much any way to improve this roster. Bullpen first is seemingly their target right now, but they will be adding a starting pitcher. They're trying to get the relief market kind of nailed down so they can get an idea what they'll have to work with as far as what they'll need in the starting staff. But, we'll see which direction they go. For me, the Cubs need a starting pitcher more than pretty much anything else on that roster. And that's where the trade deadline begins and ends for them. If they don't get a frontline starting pitcher, this is not a truly competitive team on the National League side. This is a team that gets bounced most likely by the Mets, the Dodgers, and the Phillies possibly as well. They need some starting pitching there more than just about anything else. Anthony, Michael, what was your grade for my models with the first 4 picks? With the Marlins, you mean? I would say, it's way too early to give grades. I'd pretty much put a B on every single one of the draft classes out there with the exception of probably the Baltimore Orioles. I think they did a great job with the slot values that they do have. But I think pretty much everybody deserves a B because, again, it's way too early. These are players that are not going to be in the big leagues most likely at the end of this year, most likely not until the end of next year at the earliest. So it's going to be a while until we figure out who ultimately did well. Heel, did you see a possible trade like Jazz or Jazz and Peraza for Suarez and Perdomo or something like that? No, I don't. Just Chisholm's not going anywhere. Peraza, I think, could easily move. Now, as far as Suarez being moved from the Diamondbacks, I think that's going to happen. I think his power numbers are through the roof. Strikeouts are also through the roof. Average is down anyway over the last 30 days. But he is going to be a significant trade piece at the deadline for the Diamondbacks. And I think they could get a nice return for him and still stay competitive in the same wild card race. As far as Perdomo, he's not going anywhere with the Diamondbacks. His contract is too good. Anthony, the Marlins have the second best medical staff because of our orthopedic surgeon. He works for the University of Miami and the Jackson Memorial Hospital. There's a lot of great medical staffs out there, but I was just mentioning how Meister is the one doctor that if you have a Tommy John or something along those lines, you remember the names like Dr. James Andrews. You remember Dr. Keith Meister. There's another one out in L.A. I can't remember his name. He's the team doctor, I want to say, for the Lakers. But those are kind of the big three, big four. There's another one, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But those are some of the biggest doctors in the business. And when you have those guys on your staff, generally you feel like you have a leg up on the competition. But we'll see. If the Rangers taking a little bit of a risk with the injured pitchers, that didn't work for them before. We'll see if they have a little bit more luck this time around. Sean, will the Cubs add a hitter? I believe they will. We've been talking a little bit during our lives about the Cubs looking at a kind of a bench utility type player, somebody who could kind of steady some of the young players that they do have in that lineup. Matt Shaw, among others. I think like a player like a Willie Castro makes a lot of sense, a low-cost option for them to go for. I don't think they'll be doing anything too pricey on the market. As far as the Cubs, though, to me, again, this whole thing begins and ends with their pursuit of starting pitching. They get it, they're going to do just fine. They don't, they're going to have some struggles, and they might not have a chance to get out of the first round of the postseason if they don't get that ace at the front of their rotation. Anthony, they're saying Arquette might be moving through the system pretty fast, and he might be in the majors by the All-Star break next year. I think that's way too early for him. I think he was an older high school player for them. I think he was, about to turn 19? I'm trying to remember. I'm confusing two different teams. I think Arquette was the 21-year-old. But either way, to me, this was the draft for the Marlins was interesting in the way that the players that they did target. I'm just curious to see if the decision that they made at number one, with their first pick anyway, kind of changes the return that they're looking for in the, a Cabrera deal or a Sandy Alcantara deal. Something to kind of think about. There weren't a lot of teams that really fit the description of, position players 20 and under, not at AA yet that could have made a difference for the Marlins, or even would have fit the trade package going back the other way to, say, the Dodgers or another team. I think they might be changing their strategy on the return that they'll be asking for Sandy Alcantara and others. But before we get into some trades, there was one other thing I wanted to get into, and that's going to be kind of the buyers and sellers themselves. I hear so many different fan bases out there clamoring that you guys are in a buy situation. There's very few teams that are selling this year, first and foremost. But there's very few players on the market that you can truly rush out there and buy for. I think there's going to be so many teams out there that are going to be out there, just standing pat, looking for opportunities and end up doing nothing. Fan base gets angry because they did nothing, and ultimately they are bounced, or don't make it into the playoffs because they didn't do anything as far as trying to make the wild card, etc. So there isn't a lot of talent to go around. I think prices will be high as they usually are at the deadline. But let's look at the standings real quick. We talked about this last night anyway. Obviously nothing's changed with the All-Star break. But you look at some of the teams that are going to be buying. Tigers, they might buy a little bit here and there, but nothing massive at the deadline. Astros don't have the ability to bring in anything massive at the deadline here. They're not going to be in anything big. Blue Jays, I think, are looking for an ace. There's the possibility of Zach Gallen, of course. Merrill Kelly, those are some of the names there. Those would probably be the most impactful moves they could go for. Yankees, I think, will certainly try to do something big, both bullpen, third base, and in their starting rotation. I think they will add all three. Red Sox, do they add a Joe Ryan at the deadline? I think that's the big addition that they could make, but we shall see. Mariners back in that wild card spot at 51 and 45. Can they get another offensive piece to kind of keep this offense going in the second half, or does it continue its backslide that we saw over the last month there? For the Mariners as well, Munoz showed he was human right before the All-Star break. Getting him back on the right track is imperative for that team here in the second half. But there's not a lot of teams, as I mentioned, that are going to be going extreme buyers. Yankees are in that category, but pretty much nobody else is. You go to the wild card race. Rays, to me, that's going to be a selling team this year. Angels, to me, are going to be more of a stand pat, maybe trade a couple of veteran guys like a Taylor Ward, players along those lines. Twins, we've already mentioned they're going to be trading away a couple of their relievers, but it doesn't sound like they're necessarily quote-unquote sellers at this year's deadline. They're looking for opportunities even after moving on from those relievers. They should catch a pretty return in a trade as well. The Royals, they're not going to do anything major. Guardians, they're not going to shake things up too much anyway, aside from Emmanuel Clase. Orioles don't have too much that they could give up besides O'Hearn, players along those lines. A's have a couple of players that have caught my eye, but I just don't think they're going to do anything with a Rooker or anybody like that, like Soderstrom either. And White Sox don't really have much at this deadline. Dodgers, I think they're going to be playing more of a blocker at this year's deadline. I don't think they'll be buyers. Cubs, absolutely for an ace, wherever they can search high and low for one. Phillies are looking for a high-end reliever. Griffin Jacks, Duran, the Twins rumors that we mentioned yesterday and early in our video today. But they're also looking for a center fielder, an improvement over Brandon Marsh. Buxton, I think, would be a great fit there. They could do kind of a one-stop shopping, as John Heyman said in his article today, and just kind of solve their issue for a leading reliever and a center fielder to kind of solve some of their issues out there with production. And then you get to the wild card teams. Padres are looking to kind of retool a little bit, save a little bit of money here and there, stay competitive in that wild card race. They're not going to be doing anything major, however. Brewers kind of fall in that same boat. There was thought that maybe Peralta could be the guy that moves in kind of a Josh Hader way. That's ultimately not going to happen. As far as the other teams here in kind of that wild card plus range, Giants, they already made their big move with Rafi Devers, but they could change the structure a little bit here with their team, save a little bit of money here as they head towards free agency for the Giants anyway. For the Cardinals, we've talked about Helsley and Arenado quite a bit. But they're supposedly looking for a right-handed hitter and a starting pitcher if they decide to buy, but they're not going to be adding big here at the deadline. Giants, the team we just mentioned, they made their big move already, but they could go add some supplemental pieces to this roster, or just wait until the offseason to make their next big addition. Reds, they're looking for an outfielder. I think they would love something big. I just don't think they'll have the opportunity to. Another team that would be a great fit for Byron Buxton, but that's ultimately not going to happen. And then, of course, the Diamondbacks, 47-50, 5.5 games back, and this is a team that's likely to trade Naylor, that's likely to trade Suarez, and still try to compete for the NL wildcard. It will be tougher, but I think they're still going to try to field a pretty MLB-ready return in a package for either of those two players. All right, let's try to catch up on a few of these comments here. Anthony Michael, when it comes to developing minor league talent, is it different developing high school prep and young international kids from college kids? Absolutely. College kids, just by their nature, are a little bit more mature, had to live on their own, get away from mommy and daddy for a little while, do their own laundry, and grow up just a little bit. Not saying they're finished products or that they're all completely grown, but it's a different type of a player. You get the international kids; they're very kind of in that same vein. Have to been playing at the Dominican summer leagues down there and being away from their families for that, and trying to live in the team housing, those kinds of things. You get to the U.S. side of things, and you have to learn how to adapt from being away from your family. So as far as drafting and developing high school talent, that would probably be the most different here, because again, you're still having to deal with kids who haven't been out of the home, and you're just trying to see if they can handle that part of life first, and then the baseball stuff, of course, is the important part for you. But you have to build that foundation first. So sometimes those high school kids, if they don't have that maturity, if you didn't just scout them all the way through, that maturity can come back and bite you if you're not scouting properly. But college kids, they don't have as high of a ceiling. You have a little bit more of a trajectory on what the player is going to end up being. High schoolers, the sky's the limit. You don't really know what they're ultimately going to be because they're still adding muscle, still growing, still adding height. They may be able to throw a little bit harder in a year or so, but college kids are pretty much well-defined as far as who they're going to be in the big leagues. Mark, since CY likes to do one trade to try to get what Texas would need, can you do a trade, Sim, to see what Texas would have to give up to get Grant Holmes and Iglesias and Ozuna? They're not going to get Grant Holmes. The Braves are looking to retain Holmes. They're not going to get him. Iglesias, I think they could go for. I just don't see the reason because he's not that big of an improvement over what the Rangers currently have. And as far as Ozuna, insert Jock Peterson here comment. To me, there's a lot better fish that they can go for. Now, as far as a one-stop shopping, I think there's a lot of teams that they could go to. The article that John Heyman put out there today, there's a lot of teams that kind of hold all the pieces for teams at the deadline. The Twins are one of those teams. The Cardinals, if they decide to sell here at the deadline, could be another fit there. There's not a whole lot of selling teams, but there's a few that have a couple of nice pieces that could be dealt, including offensively for the A's. I doubt they end up moving any of those guys. But as far as a one-stop shop, let's go ahead and do a couple of trades here before we wrap up. Let me clear this off. And we'll go ahead and do a Rangers trade. We've done a lot with the Twins, though. I was kind of playing with this idea, and this player does have a full no trade. But Manny Machado is going to be making $40 million in actual cash very quickly. His luxury tax commitment's only $31 million, though. But for a team like the Padres, is cash strapped, that $40 million albatross on there is really going to hurt, especially when you still have Xander Bogaerts. You still got to pay Fernando Tatis as well. So I was kind of playing around with the idea in the same vein of Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton. If the Rangers decided to do something different here and take off of the long-term money on Machado, solve their third base needs in one fell swoop, and even get a positive asset out of it, like Fernando Tatis Jr., that's an incredible contract, by the way. You put him out there and right, or you move him to DH, or move a Garcia to a DH, or Evan Carter gets days off. Any number of those types of things could happen. But let me put Machado in there. So Machado's at negative 89. Tatis is at 77. Just to kind of clear this, or just to kind of show what the number is left on both of those guys, that means they're taking out about $23 million in salary. That means you'd have to include $15 million going from the Padres to the Rangers in this deal to kind of cover the money left here. But the main thing for them is they're getting out of that long-term money. Now, here's the thing. They ain't just going to do that for straight up to prospect around 2. That's not going to happen. So, if they were to do something like this, again, I highly doubt this would happen. But if the finance guys have their way, this would really clear up their books for years to come. That's $40 million in actual value that would be coming off. Look at this contract. This is Manny Machado. This year he's making 17, right? The luxury tax calculation, though, is 31. Look what it goes to next year, and they're already fighting it right now. It goes to 25. And then, oh wait, for his age 34 through his age 40 season, you're going to be paying him roughly $39 million. $39 million for years 34 through 40 of Manny Machado. Those are clearly going to be years in decline. And that's a luxury tax payroll commitment, or luxury tax calculation of 31 mil. This would be a great piece for them to offload just for the pure cash savings of it. But for the Rangers, they're right up against it for the tax this year. They want to reset their tax thresholds this year and kind of go over the limit next year. So by getting the Padres to pay down a little bit of that deal, makes the deal worth it for them. So what could you give to the Padres in return? Well, they've been looking for some catching help. You don't really have anybody besides a Higashioka. If you wanted to do something like that, I wouldn't say that would be out of the realm of possibility. Maybe a Jonah Heim goes back the other way and you kind of get off of that deal and bring in a veteran catcher. Those kinds of things are all possible here. But I think the more likely option here is that they go with some proven talent that can immediately come in and play for them. So I'm talking like a Jake Burger to come in and solve their needs at first base, which have been a need ever since Eric Hosmer went away. So you bring in Jake Burger, obviously not a equal value here. You would need a whole lot more than Jake Burger to make this deal worth it. If I'm the Padres, I'm looking to offload salary here. Another piece that they could easily go and move. Murahone's having a great year. He probably becomes your closer next year. But Suarez, if you move on from Suarez, that's another $4 million. They could afford eating the $4 million for Texas. But now you give yourself a little bit of wiggle room to try to add a couple of pieces here. So say we go to page 3. They go after Cabrera, former top prospect Aaron Zavala, former interesting prospect in Avery Weems. Guys who could come in and be a bullpen arm for them is in Avery Weems. Jake Berger obviously goes into their first base spot and kind of flexes their lineup around, Rise moving around a little bit as well. But this would be an interesting trade. This is still not a fully fleshed out idea, but this would be something, if you're the Padres, that saves them real cash, and that's really what they're looking for right now. John, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Got about 37 of you guys with us right now. Be sure to hit that thumbs up at the bottom of the video. We're going to be live every single night, talking a lot about the trade deadline, getting you ready for flurry of activity in the weeks leading up here to the deadline. Will the Yankees get Suarez? I believe they will. I think there's a lot of momentum on the side of them adding a third baseman that they've already moved over Jazz Chisholm, gotten off of the contract of DJ LeMahieu, and they basically got a filler over there for now. They will be adding a third baseman. I do think Suarez will be that player, but I think their priority is to go after starting pitching first, and whatever's left as far as assets, they commit to adding to a bullpen or to a third baseman. I think that's the likely route we see for the Yankees, but I do think Suarez, honestly, of all the third base pieces out there, I think he's probably the most likely to end up in a Yankees uniform, but we shall see. Joe, welcome in. JC Escara and a prospect for Manny. Yankees take all the cash. I think you could probably get a prospect out of it. Because again, Manny is negative 89. But the Yankees are a team that could take on that contract quite easily. They've been worried about their luxury tax all year long. Is this really the move that they would make, though? With the declining third baseman, we saw that before with Josh Donaldson. I think Machado's a much better player, though, but, we shall see. Willard, by the way, the Astros got a legit Judge outfielder-like pick. Nyans, I thought, was drafted as a third baseman, or if they're going to try him at short, trying to remember, no, they drafted him as a third baseman. That's what he was. But he certainly looks like a specimen, that's for sure. You got a good one there, Willard. They compared him quite a bit to Austin Riley as far as his approach, swing, those kinds of things. Let's go ahead and clear this one out and do a little bit more of an interesting trade here. Let's go to the Twins. The Cubs were one of the teams that were mentioned as a fit for Duran. So if we put Duran in here, or let's go ahead and put Jax in this deal, because I think Jax would probably be more appealing to them as a setup guy. Okay, so you go for Jax. You're the Cubs. You're going to have to give up Owen Casey in this deal. I don't think there's any way around it. He is absolutely mashing for the Cubbies. So there's your centerpiece of this deal. And then you can throw in a couple of other smaller pieces here. Say Triantos goes in this deal. I think that's been a popular name that we've seen. And then you're at 20 and 27. You need about a 7 or an 8 or a 10. You could go reliever back. If you go Rojas, that would be a little bit expensive, but I think that would certainly get it done if the Twins included Castro in this deal. Then I think you're cooking with gas here. Then I think you throw in Melendez in this deal. There's your trade. Fair trade and post it. So the Cubbies get their elite reliever and a utility infielder, 2 holes that they're looking to fill here at the deadline, for probably their best minor league hitting prospect in Owen Casey, a nice project in Rojas, and another project in Melendez. If I'm the Cubs, do I do this deal? Honestly, I'd probably look for a better reliever, but Jax is truly a great pitcher this year. Castro, I think, solves some holes as far as the bench utility role and keeps him away from other clubs as well, who might value him a little bit more than what you'd be willing to pay all on his own. But you get Casey, Rojas, and Melendez. I would definitely do this on the Twins. If I'm the Cubs, I have my reservations. But we'll see. And a good shortstop pick, tall one, yeah. Interesting trade sim for Texas and San Diego. Yeah, it's kind of my thoughts as well. I'm just trying to think of out-of-the-box deals. Now, as we get closer to the trade deadline, we'll probably do a lot more realistic deals because when you get close to a deadline, the extravagant deals where you're getting 3, 4, 5 teams involved, those are hard to get done, man. All one team has to do is say, this doesn't really work, or the owner has to come in and say, what are you thinking about doing? No, thank you. It gets very complicated if you get too many, chefs in the kitchen. So, we'll see. There's a lot of ways the deadline can go for a lot of teams. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Going to do a short live tonight. We'll be back live tomorrow night. We'll be live early tomorrow night as well. I know the All-Star game's going on. I know everybody's excited about the All-Star game. This is how much interest I have. To me, the All-Star game serves one purpose, and that's to give the accolades to the players who deserve to be there. The name or the star next to their name says they were an All-Star. But this year, they certainly did a miss by putting in Mizorowski. I think that's why the game to me is more of a farce this year more than any other. And the fact that they didn't put in Nathan Eovaldi. If you're putting in Mizorowski for 5 starts, Eovaldi's missing to qualify for the best ERA in the majors right now by 6 innings. He has a 1.58 ERA. By the way, the second best is Paul Skeens at 2.01, the current league leader. Not saying anything against Paul Skeens. Great pitcher, etc., etc. But Eovaldi deserves his flowers. She's not going to get him this year. And for, like Mike Lindsay said on kind of the, the WFAA news network, or the news in Dallas anyway, that these kinds of things are, what take, bubble players who may get into the Hall of Fame, with their, stats and so forth, World Series victories, that takes a guy that's on the bubble to a guy that's in the Hall of Fame because of those accolades that he gets. And I think Major League Baseball really missed the boat on Nathan Eovaldi this year. He's been truly special as a pitcher, and he deserves to be recognized. I understand he pitched on Sunday. Then why wasn't he one of the first guys that they named as an AL replacement? And then say, oh, by the way, Nathan Eovaldi's not going to be able to pitch. Sorry, here's Joe Ryan's invite. That could have easily have been done, a week ago, 2 weeks ago? And instead they didn't decide to do that. So we'll have to see, what the All-Star game looks like. For me, though, this is going to be all about the trade deadline tomorrow. So be sure to join us tomorrow night. We'll be live. I'm guessing, I'm planning around 7:30, and we'll probably go for at least a few hours. So in our comments section on our video, after the video is over, send us a comment. Put it on the video. Rewatch the video and put your comment out there, because I do get those comments. I want to see which teams you guys are interested in talking about tomorrow. I want to see the players that you guys are interested in getting traded here at the deadline. What teams will they go to? All of those kinds of things. So let us know in the comments section what teams you want us to discuss. I know we have some Philly fans that are looking forward to some Philadelphia conversation. I know you guys had messaged me through our chats on our videos anyway. So I do appreciate that, but we'll have a lot of that content coming your way tomorrow night. So be sure to hit that like, subscribe at the bottom of the video. Find us on X at Upside Ascend and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Y'all stay safe out there, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night for all the latest from the MLB trade deadline.